Hi, and welcome to this video walking through my concept mapping assignment on gas exchange. I'm using a case study of a 38-year-old patient recovering from femur surgery who develops a sudden pulmonary embolism. Each of the next slides covers one section of the clinical judgment model: S-bar, recognizing cues, analyzing cues, prioritizing hypotheses, generating solutions, taking action, and evaluating outcomes, plus how to format the references. For each section, I'll explain what it is, how I built it, and show the actual example from my map. The first section is S-bar, situation, background, assessment, and recommendations. This is the same handoff format nurses use when calling a provider. In the situation, I state who the patient is and why I'm reporting in a sentence or two. The background pulls in relevant history, why the patient had surgery, and the current vital signs. The assessment is my own clinical impression, what I think is going on and why. And the recommendations is what I want done next. In my case, the situation was a 38-year-old man who 2 days after femur surgery suddenly became short of breath with chest pain, and my assessment was that this looked like impaired gas exchange from a possible pulmonary embolism. Recognized cues is where I pull out every abnormal finding that points towards my concept without explaining them yet. That comes next. I'll scan the vital signs in labs for anything outside the normal range, review physical assessment, and pull in risk factors from the background. For my patient, that meant an oxygen saturation of 89%, a heart rate of 118, a respiratory rate of 28, a warm, swollen right calf, plus risk factors like obesity, smoking, and missed blood thinner doses. Each cue is just a short factual statement at this point. Analyze cues is where I explain why each cue matters. I group related findings together, like all the respiratory ones, and connect them to the underlying pathophysiology. In this case, how a clot blocking a pulmonary artery causes a ventilation perfusion mismatch and drops oxygen levels. This is also where citations come in. Every explanation needs to be backed by a credible current source cited right after the sentence in APA format. So I use Cleveland Clinic and Mayo Clinic here since they're reliable, regularly updated, and patient education sources. Next is prioritize hypotheses, where I rank the patient's problems from most to least urgent. I use the ABC framework: airway, breathing, circulation, along with the Maslow's hierarchy to decide what could hurt the patient soonest if it's not addressed. For this patient, hypoxia came first because it's immediately life-threatening, followed by the gas exchange and hemodynamic instability from the clot itself, then pain, then anxiety. For generate solutions, I write one SMART goal for every hypothesis I just listed in the same order. Each goal needs to be specific, measurable, and time-bound. So instead of saying oxygen will improve, I say oxygen saturation will rise above 94% within 30 minutes of starting supplemental oxygen. I did this for all 4 hypotheses: oxygenation, heart rate and breathing, pain control, and anxiety, each with its own measurable target and time frame. Take action lists the actual nursing interventions that will get the patient to each goal. I matched at least one intervention to every goal, included the specific dose, route, or technique, and added monitoring steps alongside the treatments, all within my scope of practice as a nurse. For example, administering oxygen at a specific liter flow, preparing the patient for a stat CT scan, giving the anticoagulant as ordered, and coaching breathing techniques to help with both oxygenation and anxiety. Evaluate outcomes is the last step, where I go back and check the patient against the exact criteria from each goal. the same vital sign, scale, or lab value and state clearly whether the goal was met, partially met, or not met using real data. For my patient, oxygen saturation improved from 89 to 96%, heart rate and respiratory rate came down, pain dropped to a 2 out of 10, and the patient could verbalize and demonstrate anxiety reducing techniques. So all 4 goals were met. Last, my references follow APA 7th edition formatting. For a web page from an organization, the format is author or organization, then the date in parentheses, then the title of the page in sentence case and italicized, and finally the direct URL. No retrieve from needed for stable web pages. References are alphabetized by author using a hanging indent and are double spaced. I use Cleveland Clinic and Mayo Clinic as my 2 sources and formatted them exactly this way. Finally, this slide pulls everything together into one condensed view of the completed concept map, so you can see how every section connects from the S bar at the top through the recognizing and analyzing cues, prioritizing hypotheses, generating solutions, taking action, and evaluating outcomes. I want to be clear that this is just an example to show you how to fill out a concept map in more detail. It's not a template to copy. Your own concept map should be based on your own patient assessment and data. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.